and you truly do not have a problem, hallelujah. I have no problem. My life has not become unmanageable. I do not have a problem over which I have no control. Prove it. Co-sponsor and ratify at just the federal level, which still leaves 34 states left that have to ratify an amendment for it to become binding. Just ratify a non-binding amendment at the federal level that won't be binding until the states go for it too. Just do that. If you're a federal official and you've been in elected office, prove that you do not have a problem. Because the first thing we're doing in these conversations with people who, or with ourselves or with others who are addicts in our lives, is establishing if that's true. We're diagnosing. So let's diagnose. If you do not have a problem over which you have no control, prove it. A simple no-brainer amendment would look like this, with no question. No rational recovery or rational society or sober democracy would have a problem with an amendment institutionalized, engraved in the law of the land, irrevocably. Corporations are not people. Money, goods, and services are not speech. And we all have the right to enjoy an inalienable civic right to an electoral process that is only publicly financed. Why not? Why not? If you can't co-sponsor and champion and go on tour for and ratify that amendment, we know there is a problem.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And what will happen? What will happen when you go to the addict and say, I just want to see if there's a problem here. Right?
Deny it.
Just go through, just withhold access, create a legal framework in your life that completely prevents you from getting access to the substance to which you're addicted. What are the things that could happen?
Take them all back and shoot them. No, teasing, kidding.
Some violent response.
Kidding. Yeah.
I think you need to go up to the security counter.
I'm teasing everyone.
Notice how the camera he's using is never facing him.
Oh, here. There you go. Now it is.
You said 30 minutes, Bill?
Well, more than likely that because this guy is part of the system, he would reject such amendment and said it can't be done.
Yeah, who wants to be strapped down? Who wants to go through withdrawals? Who wants to do that? And truthfully, let's see what Monty has to say, and I'll make this point.
I think also, we got to look at the other side about also giving them power. Little things like us going to Starbucks.
Thank you.
Yeah, don't buy in.
Thank you. So we're not, can you bring that up again? Will you raise your hand if I haven't talked about that in like 7 minutes? Yeah. You said we had 30, right?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. And if anyone sees my cell phone, just let me know. It's around here somewhere. It's probably,
what's up with the cell phone thing?
It's probably in my bag.
He's missing a camera.
I know, it's security culture. We're losing our cell phone. Okay, so, all right, so.
Somewhere.
So close.
Thanks, Buzz. Appreciate that.
Monty's comment was so insightful that I mean it. Make sure I get back to that in just a few minutes. Be my timekeeper on that, because I really do need to get into that part, Monty. But we're still in the first half of this testing, right? So, if they in the event that they don't want to be strapped down, in the event that they are out of control and their lives have become unmanageable, in the event they cannot help themselves and we were right, they've become a threat to themselves and to others. The BP oil catastrophe was evidence of that. We were right. The fact that they still have over 1,000 offshore oil drilling rigs just like it. Even though 11 people died, many more people will die from the toxics, even though they dumped on top of the oil chemical dispersant to hide the accountability, even though our government participated in that, even though it was an ecocide, even though we can't fathom, we have no idea when our communities and our ecology will ever recover, if at all. We were still kind of in let's test it mode. Let's see if there's a problem over which we have no control, right? But what if we were right that that was proof? What if we were right and the financial crisis and the deliberate architecture of it and the deliberate execution of it by those who couldn't stop themselves? They don't want to see people out on the streets, families out on the streets. They don't want to see the human face of the consequences of their actions, but they can't stop themselves, obviously. So what if they don't want to be strapped down when we give them the option? What if there is a likelihood that they'll resist? What will that look like? What will it look like? What are some of the things that it does look like when you confront an addict about the fact that their lives become unmanageable, out of control, and we need to have a talk because we can't allow this anymore?
They deny
Anger.
They deny it?
Denial.
Anger?
Illogical.
What's that?
Illogical justification.
For example?
Well, I did it, but this person's doing this, or this company's doing
or
this.
I had to do it because...
I had to do it because...
What if
Yeah.
I didn't?
Yeah.
Somebody else would just do it.
Right.
Or they try and control it for a little bit, so they think they try and pull back and put themselves in a parameter, but that's just like a dry drunk. They're still a drunk because they haven't gone through the steps.
They might say, "You're right. You're right, Don. You're right. I'm gonna clean up. I'm gonna clean up." They might say that. Whether they do or not is a different story, right? They might say, let's just overturn Citizens United and go back to $2.1 billion of our wealth going to corporate interests and political ads alone. Because the glory days of 2008, 2009, and early 2010.
When we had true democracy.
Yeah, those were the glory days of democracy here, right? Is that a sober response, let alone a sobering response, right?
And that's the
Right?
best response.
Right.
Love
Because
it.
it makes you believe
Mm-hmm.
that they are getting sober, but they don't really.
Yeah.
Just like backstabbing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they'll say, let's make an amendment. Let's do. You're right. We have a problem. Let's make a. And I'm going to champion fixing this problem. I'm Nancy Pelosi. I'm going to champion fixing this problem, right? We're going to overturn Citizens United, and Bernie Sanders over here, who we all really do love, but is so stuck in the system, right, that he doesn't even know how to write a bill that he thinks could pass, and so he's taking a shortcut and a loophole, right? Let's say corporations aren't people. Great. They can't hide their fracking ingredients. They can't claim that what was our property was their property. They can't claim that they're no longer property. They're people, and they can control their own property. Like us, we can treat us and our commons like property. Great, that is great. Let's do that. But then you have the legislative opening, or what about the money in politics? So we call this locking the front door, but putting red flashing arrows from the front door to the back door of the House of Democracy, right? You can't come in here. So they'll say. So then they can say that. And say what the Bernie Sanders amendment, for example. There's like dozens of amendment language out there right now, and we do report cards on them, and then we also do the thing that actually Monty's touching on. I think is how do we hold ourselves accountable. We're going to start doing monthly deep democracy trackers of all the organizations in the game and ask them, do you support this, yes or no, this, yes or no, this, or yes or no. We do a spectrum. Let me finish this one thought real quick, and then I'll get to you, and then we'll go to the Starbucks Starbucks piece. Monty so insightfully interjected. But you can have a nonprofit that can give money to politics as long as it's a nonprofit. Well, we call that a PAC or a super PAC, right? That's what that is, right? So back door over here. Come on in and continue to cover. So why not? Corporations are people. Money, goods, and services are never going to be speech, and all campaigns are going to be through an inalienable civic right that we enjoy, like the rest of the rights we've established in our Constitution. Only publicly financed elections. Why not? Go back there. Go back there. Don't stop going back to the origin, the source, the truth of why you're confronting the addict in the first place. Because they are always going to come up with ways to stay on the hook. Now, let's see what we're going to say, and then let's talk about our role in the addiction system. Yeah.
I want to say something to what you just said, but prior to that, I was just curious as to whether or not the report card you're talking about is on that National Convention website. Or how do I find that?
They will be back up because we're doing the new blog thing and everything. The wonderful volunteer, amazing, dedicated people who run the website are getting to it. But in the meantime, you can look at some examples that I have after this. Yeah.
Okay. The public financing of campaigns is basically eliminating the drug dealer. Because if there is no place to get the drug anymore, then you have the forced recovery.
So thank you, perfect segue. Mm-hmm. What is the substance in this addiction that we're talking about? So what are people addicted to? Money. So let's think of it as meth, even though that's a really horrible thing to make somebody think about.
Right.
It really is. I don't like thinking about meth at all.
No.
Like I don't even want that in my in my sphere of energy. I don't want to think about it. But meth is made up of many things, right? It's got ingredients. So what's the meth in this case? The combination of those ingredients comes out to this drug. What is that?
It's power. It's got to be power.
It's power. So we call the addiction to power, right? That's the thing we're targeting. We call that greed. What is the biggest ingredient in power in this society?
Money.
Even more so,
consumption.
Wealth. Overall wealth. So if that's the stuff, that's the major ingredient of the stuff in the veins of the people so addicted they can't stop themselves from being a threat to themselves and others and our kids and our home. Where does it come from, since Rick brought it up? How was that substance manufactured, trafficked, and brought into the mix? How do you create wealth? Huh? Okay, so what do we call where we spend our money? One thing. There are two things, and that's one of them. Consumption. Second thing.
Production.
Labor, of which production is one consequence of our labor. Labor and consumption creates all wealth. Now we're getting into it. Because Monty was like, we have to look at our role in this. We have to look at our role in this. The reason is because, if you've ever worked with addiction in your lives, your community, your circles, you may know. Addiction is a disease. We've confirmed that. That addiction and the disease of that addiction needs support to thrive and live. That addiction, that disease has control over its host. Hosts can't help themselves. Hosts can't help themselves. And anybody in what's called the addiction system, in the whole sphere of that person's life, if they are not part of the recovery plan, they are inherently, implicitly, if not explicitly, contributing to and supporting the addiction.
Enablers.
Yes.
Enablers. Enablers.
Like I told my friend, she needs to participate to help out. If I'm going to help her.
Yeah, exactly. So, we have a dual role, a very inconvenient, troubling dual role on this end, and a third role in the whole picture. If you look at the whole picture, not the intervention side, but the whole thing, we are, at the very least, victims of the abuse. We are enablers. And we're pushers. We're the ones pushing the substance. I mean, we're making it. We're making the substance, right? And we're putting it out there. Wealth and consumption. I mean, labor and consumption creates all wealth. So, one way or another, we have to change the channels of how that wealth gets distributed and to whom, so that it can be used, but not abused and become a source of addiction, right? So it's use, abuse, addiction. We're not saying that use is bad. We're not saying use is harmful. We're not saying use is toxic. We're not saying use creates codependency. We're saying that abuse and then addiction do, right? So, we've got the wealth, right? There's lots of medicine. There's lots of healing ingredients out there, right? It's just when they become abused. So, we have many roles, and it gets very complicated. We could do, last night in conversation, it was clear that we could take a week and still not be done with the conversation. But let's test. If you don't have a problem, this won't be a problem. This will be easy. This won't be for you. This will be for somebody else who needs to check themselves out of power and into rehab. This will be for somebody else who's on the sauce. This will be for somebody else who can't help themselves. This will be for somebody else whose life has become unmanageable. Not you. You co-sponsor or ratify this thing. But you got 100 days after the government that takes charge from the 2012 general auction. In 2013's next Congress, you have 100 days. We've given you our commons over the decades. We've given you our water, our air, our food. We've given you control over our bodies, our minds, our education, our children's bodies, our children's minds, our children's education, our welfare, our health care, our communities, our homes where we live. We've become number of the world in onset of obesity, type 2 diabetes, personality disorders. 200 people out of the 300 million people in this society will die of stress-related illness. We lead the world in heart disease, cancer, and mental illness. We've given you everything we have. This is our last-ditch effort. This is our leaving no stone unturned. As we approach the precipice, as we go towards the edge of the cliff, this is our last hope. If you cannot do this in the generous, magnanimous offer of 100 days, then we have no choice but to do an intervention. And the question of what that really means and looks like, the question of whether we can take responsibility for this ingredient that we add, the dominant ingredient that we add to the substance, wealth, through our labor and consumption. Can we catch up? Can we catch up to societies that can balance power by walking out on their systems when they become unfair? Can we catch up to the Quebecois students and walk out and refuse to go back to that relationship until healthy terms are established and a new social contract? Can we walk out like those in support of Yosoi 132? Can we walk out like those in Tahrir Square? Can we catch up to all the industrialized societies and walk out on abusive systems until the terms change, until a recovery program is in place, until they can make amends, either literally in our Constitution or reparations, wherever possible, to everyone they've injured, till they can make good on an actual recovery program. You never have somebody in a recovery program who people question for very long is actually going through the steps. That's why you have a sponsor. The sponsor knows. The people in your life know. if you're cutting corners, right? Because you have to do the work, and there is no way to shortcut that work. You're either doing it and it's clear, or you're not doing it. Can we catch up to those societies, even undeveloped societies, even societies in the developing world, in the periphery of power of this planet, who have found a way to balance power by walking out on those who control their lives in such a toxic, abusive way they couldn't take it anymore, and they've given them everything they have, even their children's future. And they say, enough is enough, we're walking out. That is the question of the intervention. So what we're deciding to do is create our own 12-step recovery program for the institutional relationship. The relationship of us as the higher power in our society to the dominant institution who is addicted and can't stop itself. Those people in it, right? And so spiritually and emotionally and psychologically and socially and communally, those people may want to, and I recommend that they go through an actual 12-step program. But for the institution of our society, as we are the higher power, it suddenly falls on us as those who are become enablers, right? As well as victims, as well as those who generate the substance that is being used and then abused, and has become the source of addiction and the suffering of us all in a social psychopathology. It's incumbent upon us to take the responsibility. Like it says in the video, take responsibility. We'll take responsibility for letting greed go too far. And how we do that will obviously have to be very well organized. And it will mean that in every link in the chain, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, however you're doing it, keep doing it. But let's make sure that we're communicating in a way that we can guarantee that every link in the chain will be as strong as possible, and that we'll all agree that while we've been taking one step forward on a healthcare issue, or one step forward on war, one step forward on gender equality, one step forward on whatever it is you're working on, one step forward on localizing your food supply, that every time one of these organizations that takes a one step forward and sends an email blast to everyone and talks to their grant makers and says, we did it, we're victorious, hallelujah, give us more money, keep sponsoring us, we had a measurable goal, and look how we've succeeded. Aren't we wonderful, and don't you feel great that you're part of us and on our email list? Every time we do one of those one steps, just one of them, we've taken 10 steps back. And we've been doing a one step forward, 10 steps back process, way out the tent, for 40 or 50 years.
And the mate gets spilled
and
as a result.
The most important thing you can have in your day gets spilled everywhere. So, here's a block. And use your bright green thing. Here's the block. Bright green wallet thing. So, they'll all, each of them, and all of us, will say, okay, we took this one step forward. Look how much closer to what we defined as the goal and what we defined as victory is, right? And they all do that. In this line, they're doing that. In this line, they're doing that. In this line, they're doing that. And meanwhile, the block, the tectonic plate of their reality, has moved all the way back here. But yay! Yay! we were over here. Now we're over here. Yay!
Yeah, right. Oh, gas prices.
This is how we do it. This is how we've been doing it for 50 years. So, let me just make a point. Thank you. Thank you. So, part of our task is to organize ourselves in a commitment to recovery through a process of intervention, because we're getting clear. We're getting so sober about what's really going on. And it feels so true, and it rings so true, that we have to create the capacity the way Occupy does, or did, even the way the Tea Party does or did, to generate a willingness on a moving train for all those institutions in our society that co-opt the energy of progress, right? And celebrate when they've moved progress all the way back here, right? We have to, in each of our organizations, in each of our communities, make that commitment to be the strongest link in the chain we can on a national platform.
Global.
Like it's a, well, and global, with global solidarity. This is nationally for us, it's thinking locally, acting, thinking globally, acting locally. There it goes again. As if a train has started moving and they have to get on. Remember what happened? Like I said, who thinks that 9 months ago, who would have thought that 9 or 10 months ago, the 99% of the 1% would have been household terms in the society of the United States?
Right.
Nobody was thinking about class. Nobody. I mean, of course, we all were, but 90-some% of the 99% were not. Right? Only 10% of the society is even in a labor union anymore. So, who would have thought? And yet, everybody needs to be a part of that suddenly. We are the 99%. Here are our trainings. We are the 99% MSNBC. We are the 99%. We're on the train. They had to run for that thing like they were catching a rail ride. Right? The thing wasn't going to stop for them. They had to run and catch on and get on that train and be like, we're here. We're on the train with you. Right? To the extent that we've just been modeled, we've just seen how that's possible, every community we have continues to have that much power at the least. Just the power to become as strong and capable as it can and agree on a platform. So, with the time that I have left, which is what? What time is it?
8 minutes.
Okay. I'm going to tell you how it is that we want to have conversations with all of those organizations and agree on one platform and make that platform a local organizing tool. So, if I had my way, I'd be in these conversations, right? I was just telling Kyle this a little while ago. If I had a magic wand and I could say, here's what I think the platform should be, I think because there are CEOs in the world who make 15 times more than the lowest paid employees, or 25 times more than the lowest paid employees, or sometimes 50 times more than the lowest paid employees, or sometimes 125 times more than the lowest paid employees, we should have a platform that guarantees, as part of the reparations package, as we take step 9 out and unpack that thing in a scroll, hear ye, hear ye. Part of the reparations for taking our wealth, using it and abusing it for so long in such high concentration, we want a minimum wage of $30 an hour. We want 30-hour work weeks and no more. We want 30 days of vacation for every single worker, no matter what, guaranteed and no less. We want to pay no less than $30 a month for our co-pays, premiums, deductibles for our health care, guaranteed. We want a $30K cap for lifetime on all student debt, no matter how far you go with your education. We want 30 months guaranteed of maternity and paternity leave. We want no more than 30 students per instructor. We want a 1% reduction in greenhouse gases for 30 months, which takes us far beyond what Obama would have us do by 2050 in 30 months. And to pay for it all, we want, if you want to say you're 1,800 times more valuable than your lowest paid employee, right? So in the U.S., right, you have these places 50 times more than the lowest paid employee, 125 times more than the lowest paid employee. In the U.S., before the giant transfer of the debt of the creme de la creme of the 1/15th of the ruling class is 1%. The transfer of their debt, before the transfer of their debt in the financial crisis to us, and the transfer of our wealth to bail them out. Before that, CEOs made 650 times more than the lowest paid employees in the United States. And now we don't even know what the figure is because wealth is so, the transfers is so huge we haven't figured out, but we think it's somewhere between 850 and 1,000 times more than the lowest paid employee. If you want, that means there's people out there making 1,500, 1,800 times more than their lowest paid employees. If you want to say you're 500, 600, 700, 800 times more valuable than any other human being, that won't be okay with us. For any reason, you're more valuable than any other human being or any other creature. For any reason. No. There's no reason for that. But if you want to say, for your narcissistic ego reasons or whatever things you haven't worked out yet for yourself from your childhood, that you're 30 times more valuable than any other human being for any reason, fine. Every cent after that, we tax and put back into a system that guarantees that safety net. So that we don't, A, have the missing piece that we have compared to these other societies that don't have 55% of their population getting into serious mental illness by the age of 75. Right? So that we're not chronically stressed, so we're therefore not so easy to exploit. So that we can imagine going to the house visits. Imagine going to the house visits. Hey, we're doing this thing, we're building a union. I don't have any time, I'm so stressed out, and this is my third job. Imagine now going there and being like, hey, we're doing like a union summer during the time you have vacation. Hey, oh, you can't do that? Oh, that's cool, because you were working 80 hours a week before this. So now that you only work 30, you've got 50 hours a week for civic engagement.
Yep.
So, if I had a magic wand, and I could say this is the platform we should all agree on, I would say that's it. But I don't have the list of 200 million people that I want to send this platform out to and say, do you support